Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, The Unseen Forces Behind Consumer Trends. My name is Derek Gingrich, Product Manager here at Lux Research, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. Presenting today are my colleagues Cheryl Auger, Senior Research Director, and Jarrett Rumininski, Senior Research Associate here at Lux Research. Throughout the webinar, you can type any questions you have in the question box on your screen. Time permitting, we're going to answer the questions that we can at the end of the webinar. If your question does not get answered, please don't hesitate to email it to questions@luxresearch.com, and we will respond. If at any point you experience technical difficulties, such as a frozen screen, simply refresh your browser and check that your internet connection is strong. Now let's jump into the presentation.
Thanks so much, Derek. We're really excited to have an opportunity to talk about the hidden forces behind trends. And, I am actually going to start with a personal confession. So those who know me well know that I absolutely adore soda. In fact, I love it so much that one of my colleagues recently and very kindly urged me to try a prebiotic soda in an effort to convince me that I should be paying more attention to my health and wellness. And I told him, yeah, sure, I'll give it a try. And I did. But the truth is, I didn't really like it. I still reach for the real thing. And it's not just the taste, although it is undeniably delicious. It's the ritual, the sharp click of the can opening, the fizzy hiss that follows, the first cold sip. Honestly, it's ridiculous how much joy this small ritual brings me. And yet, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it. And we're all told we need to aspire to wellness, mindfulness, sustainable choices. But many of us, including me, really, we keep slipping into these old comforts that don't quite fit some of these narratives or some of the trends we're seeing, whether it's ultra-processed snacks, fast fashion, or clinging to nostalgia that may be just a little bit out of touch. There's a gap between who we want to be and what we actually do. And sometimes that gap fizzes quietly in a can of soda that I know I shouldn't love as much as I do.
So, why does knowing about the often conflicting beliefs of soda-addicted consumers like Cheryl matter? It's because these behaviors are often dismissed in surface-level research because consumers either downplay or rationalize them. But beneath the surface, they reflect deeper themes. They reflect a desire for control or escape in uncertain times, or they reflect rebellion against moralizing or performative virtue. They reflect a craving for emotional comfort amid complexity and pressure. And at a higher level, these behaviors reflect how even the most seemingly obvious and shallow consumers are actually operating according to pretty deeply held beliefs. In other words, Cheryl isn't just being a stubborn person who refuses to quit her soda habit despite knowing that it's unhealthy. Rather, she's continuing to drink soda because she believes it's healthy for her in some way. In her case, it provides a pleasing ritual and makes her feel good when she's drinking it. We'll come back to this point in a bit when we talk about consumers and junk food more broadly.
Yeah, but this gets us to the heart of today's talk. And that's the notion that in order to truly understand consumer behavior, things like drinking soda and others that are kind of hard for people to talk about or articulate, we need to uncover the underlying motivations and belief systems that drive those behaviors. This requires a methodology that's capable of revealing the deeper why behind what people do. And lucky for us, anthropology offers precisely that. It's a powerful lens to decode the cultural and emotional forces shaping consumer decisions. By tapping into these hidden drivers, we gain a richer insight into the behaviors that underpin today's most important trends. So along those lines, what will we talk about today? Well, Jarrett's going to begin with an incredible brief introduction to anthropology and how it helps us to uncover the deeper why behind emerging consumer trends. From there, we're going to explore 3 case studies that bring these insights to life. We'll start by continuing our exploration of junk food in order to reveal why consumers often hold on to indulgent choices even though they know they're not necessarily healthy for them. From there, we're going to broaden our lens. We're going to look at guilty pleasures more generally. We'll understand how consumers are reshaping the definition of desire and the implications that this has for CPG, retail, restaurants, and other brands. We're going to end with a case study on a timely issue. That's tariffs. In this case, we're going to turn to a comparative analysis looking at trends across the US, Mexico, China, and Germany to show how shifting values and cultural narratives are shaping consumer behavior and what that means for brand strategy in a volatile global market. So with that in mind, let's begin by taking a closer look at anthropology and how it contributes to that deeper understanding.
So anthropology, particularly cultural and social anthropology, goes beyond what people say or do to uncover why they say it and why they do it, within the context of shared beliefs, values, and rituals. It helps reveal the invisible forces that are shaping consumer behavior. And at Lux, we apply this lens through observational analysis of online conversations. By studying how consumers naturally discuss topics in forums, blog comments, and video threads, like Reddit, Quora, YouTube, etc., we decode the shared meanings that drive behavior and shape cultural trends. So our methodology collects millions of these long-form anonymous conversations each month. These sources allow people to express themselves honestly, providing rich, unfiltered insights into consumer culture. And we then use natural language processing and machine learning to analyze semantic context, not just keywords, to detect shared motivations, fears, attitudes, and values, to build language maps that illustrate how consumers understand and relate to ideas. And our team of anthropologists interprets these insights to identify what makes a trend meaningful and where it's headed. And with this approach, which we call consumer insights, we give organizations a powerful view into the evolving mindset of consumers. So with that, let's look at some cultural context. In this case, we're looking at in-store shopping. In-store shopping isn't just about getting what you need. It's about turning a routine errand into a personalized hunt for value, quality, and meaning. But how does meaning come into the picture here? Well, it comes into the picture by examining the cultural context behind consumers' behavior. We at Lux look at consumer chatter and ask ourselves, what do they mean by this? And that helps us get at the core belief that is informed by cultural context. And we like to go deeper than simply asking, what are they saying? We want to know, what are they doing and why? So by considering what cultural context means to consumers in the context of in-store shopping, we're getting at their core beliefs, which are the deeper meanings behind their words and behavior. And doing so takes us beyond the surface level meaning. Because when it comes to what consumers say online, the surface level meaning is fairly obvious because it denotes fairly straightforward functional behavior that makes logical sense. So people shop in stores to find deals because they want to save money, or they want to see the food to ensure that it's fresh and not bruised. But the core belief is what we find when we go below the surface level. It reflects the hidden layers of meaning that consumers assign to products, services, and activities, and the corresponding cultures they build from those layers of meaning. And it's these hidden layers of meaning that can be a lot logical or illogical because they reflect consumers' deeper and often subconscious desires to construct identities and create significant narratives that enrich the experience of their daily lives. And when we examine the hidden layers of meaning, in-store shopping reveals itself to be about far more than just functional goals like comparing prices to save money or examining produce to ensure that it's fresh. Instead, consumers who shop in store see themselves going on a voyage of discovery that aligns with their identities as treasure hunters who find satisfaction and personal enrichment by combing through store shelves the way they'd comb the beach for pirate's treasure. Or, depending on the group, consumers may see in-store shopping as an instance of them being providers who take strategic steps to nurture their families by seeking out fresh food from stores, just like their ancestors would. the way they would supply the homestead or forage for berries to bring back to camp. In other words, in-store shopping connects consumers to a deep lineage that's far bigger than themselves. In this case, in-store shopping is an expression of deeply held cultural beliefs about themselves and their relationship to the world around them. And consumers aren't always consciously aware of these beliefs, but we at Lux study them every day. And by decoding these hidden consumer beliefs, Lux Consumer Insights gives brands powerful insights into the mechanisms that make consumers tick. And this knowledge empowers brands to shape their products and services according to consumers' deepest values and life goals, thereby establishing lasting and, I might add, profitable relationships with those consumers.
Awesome. That's a great overview. Let's take that and apply it to our 3 case studies, starting with junk food. So what our research has revealed is that junk food holds a unique place in the cultural and emotional lives of consumers. It often evokes strong feelings of comfort, nostalgia, even joy. And that's obviously not because of its nutritional value, but because of the memories and meanings attached to it. Many associate junk food with formative experiences, childhood snacks after school, weekend treats with grandparents, or celebratory moments with family and friends. These positive emotional imprints create a lasting bond that's pretty hard to shake. In moments of stress and uncertainty, junk food becomes more than just a snack. It becomes a coping mechanism, a source of emotional reassurance. It offers a quick, accessible way to reconnect with simpler, happier times. But beyond comfort, it also provides a sense of novelty and indulgence in daily routines that can sometimes feel monotonous or even overwhelming. So understanding this emotional landscape helps explain why consumers, like me, may resist giving up on some of their favorite habits, even if and when they are fully aware of the health implications. It's not just about taste or convenience. It's about fulfilling these deeper emotional needs.
So with that in mind, let's talk about the hidden layer of meaning behind junk food here. It shows how consumers build narratives around the culture of junk food itself, while also blending it with other cultural narratives. So what do I actually mean by this? Consumers tend not to openly proclaim that they love junk food. Some of them do, but most don't, because they know that it's bad, unhealthy for them, and they know there's a stigma around junk food and around people who are proudly and openly unhealthy. However, consumers are taking a cue from wellness culture to reframe what it means to be healthy and unhealthy. It's not just about calories or sugar or a lack of nutrients and how they affect the body, leading to things like weight gain, diabetes, etc. Instead, consumers are incorporating the holistic benefits of wellness, especially its emphasis on self-care, and applying it to their enjoyment of junk food. So they see junk food as having holistic wellness benefits because eating it is an act of self-care. Consuming foods like chocolate and drinks like soda tend to boost the happiness hormones, primarily the endorphins in the brain, thereby enhancing mood and even alleviating symptoms of depression. And so this is how consumers defend their love of junk food, not by proclaiming their love for it outright, but by assigning new cultural meanings to it, drawn from wellness culture that make the occasional junk food indulgence a key part of a broader mental health care routine. And so it's not about the shame that comes from a lack of willpower. It's about the mental health benefits of enjoying their favorite indulgences moderately. And this is what makes these second layers of meaning in consumer cultures so powerful. They bring to the surface the most profound reasons why consumers act the way that they do.
Yeah, such great points. And not surprisingly, this has some pretty important implications for our clients, especially those in CPG, as well as retail and restaurant. And one of those implications is consumers are looking for permission to indulge. There's an opportunity here to redefine indulgence for modern values by combining that emotional satisfaction that we just talked about with mindful choices. So we want to enable consumers to have their comfort food and feel good about it too. Some ideas might include things like portion control, better for you versions of nostalgic favorites, but in effort to make these meaningful to consumers, we need to ensure that we offer an emotional reward while reducing guilt. We also need to make sure that these taste great, right? That's because today's consumers are navigating a complex emotional terrain. They want joy without judgment, and brands that acknowledge the tension are more likely to earn trust and long-term loyalty. Second of all, there's an opportunity here for even more indulgence, elevated indulgence. There's an opportunity to elevate junk food from a product to a full sensory and emotional experience, something that delights, surprises, and also comforts. For example, we might create DIY comfort food kits that let consumers co-create an indulgent moment at home, like build your own after-hour snack pack. Or we might even think about digital tools that allow consumers to customize indulgent food orders based on their current mood, the time of day, or the exact flavor cravings that they're having. We could host in-store themed events with tastings, demos, and personalized snack pack stations to encourage playful exploration. And that's because many consumers are looking for those tactile, emotional, and experiential consumption moments that feel both meaningful and unique. Lastly, nostalgia still matters. There's an opportunity to emotionally tell stories through nostalgia. We can tap into consumers' deep emotional associations with food, especially around nostalgia, to drive engagement, differentiation, and loyalty. Thinking about in a retail environment, for example, immersive nostalgia aisle with retro signage, music, displays in an effort to evoke exploration and emotional connection. And this is because nostalgia remains an powerful emotional lever that creates a sense of belonging, identity, and joy. Consumers reward brands that make them feel something familiar but elevated. So with this in mind, let's turn to our next example and broadening our lens a little bit to think beyond just food and explore guilty pleasures writ large. And this is a really interesting space because, again, looking at mainstream American culture, certain desires in a historical context, especially those that are linked to sensuality or addiction, have long been moralized. They've been framed as irrational, impulsive, and threatening to both personal discipline and social order. Historically, these desires have been positioned as forces to suppress, not something we need to understand. But this cultural narrative is shifting. Emerging attitudes towards pleasure, indulgence, and control are reshaping consumer behavior. And what we found in our most recent research is that desire is being reframed through the lens of science. Consumers are increasingly embracing the idea that desire, as I mentioned, once seen as a moral or self-control issue, is now something that can be understood, managed, and even engineered through modern science. Innovations like GLP-1 drugs are shifting perceptions of overeating from a personal weakness to treatable biology, while alcohol cravings are being reclassified by consumers as neurological conditions rather than failures of willpower. This scientific reframing marks a cultural shift from judgment to intervention, transforming how we think about control, choice, and even responsibility.
So let's talk about the second layer of meaning here. The second layer of meaning reveals how consumers are also embracing the redefinition of taboo desire to update their views on American freedom itself. Because Americans have always defined freedom largely through the lens of the Declaration of Independence, namely that it's the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as the United States fully matured into a market-based consumer society, Americans then came to associate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with the ability to buy the products and services that help them to fulfill those goals. And now we see that American consumers are applying to taboo desires this freedom to pursue happiness via their wallets and their purses. So when taboo desires lead to negative effects, like the way indulging in food can lead to obesity, Consumers are choosing to embrace freedom from obesity by purchasing products like GLP-1 drugs to help them cure overeating by eliminating the food noise and curbing the desires that make them gain weight. When taboo desires lead to positive but still taboo effects, consumers are choosing to embrace freedom from social stigmas by purchasing products like cannabis that give them enhanced feelings of pleasure from things like food and sex. So their desire for this taboo pleasure thus translates into the pursuit of freedom, the freedom to buy products that help them experience pleasure.
Right. And this has some pretty interesting implications for brands. One, there's an opportunity to help consumers experience some biohacked bliss. As we talked about, they're increasingly embracing a view of desire as legitimate, biologically grounded, and part of health. It's not a failure of willpower, opening the door for companies to reframe indulgence, as we talked about, as intentional self-care. There are some implications here. We could create functional products, GLP-1 inspired food, for example, nootropic beverages that fulfill emotional needs while promoting wellness and helping people feel good. There's an opportunity here to use science-backed messaging to legitimize pleasure as part of holistic health. And we can shift marketing from guilt avoidance to health-aligned enjoyment, indulgence as enhancement, not excess, for example. Second, there's a growing interest in customization and personalization. As desire becomes seen as an individual, even measurable health metric, personalization moves from being a nice to have to something people will increasingly want because it gives them more control over how they pursue pleasure as well as well-being. We could, again, offer nutraceuticals, products that are tailored to mood, craving, or emotional states. There's opportunity here to leverage digital platform to deliver personalized content, recommendation, and product configurations, something that's certainly already happening, but this opens up new avenues. Finally, we can position personalized product as a tool for intentional and empowered self-indulgence. And lastly, of course, as humans, we all want sensory pleasure. But today's consumers want more than that. They want multisensory, immersive experiences that feel emotionally rich, tech-forward, and many are increasingly looking for ethically responsible experiences. So there's opportunities for product development that engages multiple senses, textures, aromas. We can think about smart tools, interactive formats. There's opportunity here as well to create feel-first experiences, mood-altering room scents, nostalgic comfort food rituals that we've talked about. Furthermore, we can reinforce sensory pleasure with things like transparency and ethical sourcing, appealing to conscious consumers. With that in mind, let's turn to our last case study. We're going to take a topical issue, and very timely, if I might add, to look at tariffs. And so what we've seen in recent research is that in a hyper-digital world, local products provide tangible and emotional connections. For many consumers, knowing the people behind the goods, from the farmers to the baristas, fosters trust, intimacy, a sense of belonging, especially when broader systems feel distant, unreliable, unpredictable. Right? So what we see is for many consumers, buying local empowers them to reclaim agency. It's a conscious rejection of opaque global systems in favor of choices that feel personal, impactful, and rooted in their values. And what we've seen is this is taking place in many markets. The US, not surprisingly, many consumers are looking to buy American brands for both patriotic and practical reasons. But interestingly, we're also seeing this trend in China. Many consumers are rejecting American goods in favor of domestic pride. They're turning to local platforms as symbols of self-reliance. In Germany, shoppers are advocating for clear EU labeling to support local economies, while also expressing an interest in boycotting US products. Not surprisingly, in Mexico, in response to trade tensions, many people are embracing local products as comforting symbols of both cultural pride and resilience.
So let's look at the deeper layer of meaning here with tariffs. And basically, the deeper level of meaning reveals how Trump's tariffs have caused consumers in countries like Mexico, Germany, and China, as Cheryl just mentioned, to re-examine, often unconsciously, the role that American cultural influence plays in their lives. We have to remember, for the better part of 80 years since the end of the Second World War, American products and ideas steadily came to dominate much of the globe as people in other countries gained increasing access to US products and culture, to the point where they kind of ended up taking said American economic and cultural dominance for granted. And then along came Donald Trump, who, in the eyes of many non-American consumers, single-handedly turned America from an allied exporter of goods and goodwill into a vindictive bully bent on punishing the world via trade wars. And so, in addition to bolstering these consumers' own senses of patriotism, Trump's tariffs have signaled the end of these consumers' tacit acceptance of America's cultural dominance. Our consumer insights data brings to the surface this hidden layer of meaning that underlie the resurgence of patriotism that Trump's tariffs have ignited. It's not just about patriotism, it's about the gradual shifting of long-held narratives that placed America at the center of the global economic and cultural universe.
Yeah, and this has some pretty big implications for brands as well. And not surprisingly, consumers aren't just buying products in this context, they're buying pride of place. Locality is becoming a form of cultural identity, and brands that reflect regional values, traditions, and pride can deepen that emotional resonance. And so we're seeing this idea that local is identity, with opportunities to integrate local storytelling into product packaging as well as campaigns, share narratives of regional history, local artisans, as well as production. Similarly, there's opportunity here to launch regional flavors or styles to reflect distinct cultural taste and preferences. This can create personal relevance and loyalty, transforming products into symbols of cultural belonging and pride as well. Second of all, there's an opportunity for grassroots or community-rooted innovation. We could think about co-creating within local ecosystems. And in a landscape where localism is a growing consumer value, brands can shift from global dominance to local calibration, forging partnerships that reinforce authenticity and shared purpose, right? So again, there's opportunity here to partner with local artisans to create limited edition handcrafted items. We could also, thinking about the desire for further personalization and customization, explore opportunities for customizable local products, allowing consumers to personalize with regional references like area codes, maps, landmarks, these kinds of things, in an effort to build trust and cultural capital, positioning the brand as a co-steward of local identity rather than an outsider. And lastly, we see, as I've said, consumers aren't just buying local because of patriotism, they're doing it to feel closer to what they consume. In an age of fractured global systems, there's a rising desire for things like transparency, connection, and even ethical alignment with the people and places behind the product, right? So local sourcing for many isn't just a supply chain decision, it's a signal of integrity and care. Ensure that any products are traceable, accountable, seen as authentic. Furthermore, while patriotism may drive some behavior, many consumers are motivated by shared values and not just national identity. They're looking for companies that support small producers, community health, fair labor, and sustainability, which are often embedded in local systems, right? So as we're thinking about growing regionalism, there are opportunities to align your brands with these consumer preferences. This brings us to pretty much the end of our webinar today. We're just about out of time, but before we leave you, we want to leave you with a few key takeaways from today's talk. One, and most importantly, is that anthropology unlocks deeper human truths, right? Oftentimes, traditional research misses what consumers have a hard time talking about. Anthropology, on the other hand, reveals the why behind the buy. What are the cultural and emotional forces that are shaping consumer behavior?
And also, emotional needs help to reveal new consumer demand spaces. Innovation that taps into how people feel and want to feel, like in control, feeling relieved, excited. That kind of insight uncovers unmet needs and future opportunities for brands across the spectrum.
Yeah, and along those lines, emotional insight can be a springboard for innovation. Great innovation goes beyond function, as we've talked about quite extensively today. It connects emotionally, and it's really important to have that deeper resonance. Drawing on drawing on emotions and motivations can help us to create more human-centered products and messaging that are more aligned with what consumers are really looking for, no matter if they can articulate those needs or not. And with that, we appreciate your listening, and we'll turn it back to Derek to see if there are questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Cheryl and Jared. That was absolutely fascinating. So we're now going to be taking some questions that you may have in the presentation, which you can type into the question box. If we don't get to your question during the rest of this webinar, someone from Lux will be in touch afterwards. And as a reminder, feel free to email questions at luxresearchinc.com if you think of them later after the presentation. All right, so it looks like we have quite a few interesting questions. I like this one. Okay, so we're going to start with this one. One of the people watching the webinar is asking, how can they make use of localization and tapping into local spirit and differences among localities when they work as a large multinational across many regions?
So one way to respond to this is to point out the immense benefits for larger entities that have a global footprint in partnering directly with local producers, regardless of the product or service they're selling. Integrating them into the broader chain can reap huge rewards because you get to connect with the local populace, you get to support smaller producers, and you get to kind of piggyback on the benefits they're giving.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, in today's climate, it's risky if you assume that the same strategy is going to work in every single marketplace. And it is important to understand regional nuances and differences that will impact on the success of new products and services.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more. Okay, this question's asking, a lot of the examples of the different unseen forces we looked at today are looking at cultures that have changed over very different timelines. So how do you think about the timeline of cultural change and how frequently or infrequently these unseen forces can change over time?
So that actually depends on the type of culture we're studying and the type of change that is happening. So in the case of something like our junk food example, we've seen gradually over time that wellness culture has sort of been merging into that space. Consumers have been bringing it in different ways. And that's more of an example of a more gradual shift. Now, in the case with Donald Trump's tariffs, however, this is an example of a big rupturous event completely upending a very long and storied sort of tradition of behavior. In the case we're talking about there with American cultural and economic dominance. That built up over a long period of time, but sometimes changes can be extremely fast and rupturous, upending even long established traditions like that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again to Cheryl and Jarrett. That concludes our webinar for today. The slide presentation and recording from the webinar will be sent to all attendees via an email. After leaving the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey on today's presentation, and we would really appreciate any feedback you have to help inform and improve future webinars. Take a moment and check out our upcoming webinars as well. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.